Welcome back. We are back again on a Monday night here. We thought it would be smarter to do this on a Monday night after Game Seven of the NBA Finals instead of doing it before the NBA Finals. Because what do we know? Talking about basketball before games, we're going to talk about it afterwards because that's how knowledgeable we are. But yeah, so we have NBA Finals that wrapping up. Kevin Durant traded for like the 20th time in his career. LSU won the College World Series, and we have the total of the Jello shots that we have to do over the next year. And we've also talked about the Florida Panthers going back to back. So I think, boys, what we'll start out with here, as we're in three shot here, is we'll start with LSU. So they beat Coastal Carolina. I think they went 2-0. I think they swept them for all of that I know. I also think Coastal Carolina's coach got ejected or something.
Very funny ejection. I forget what it was about. I think it was like a strike call or whatever, which is always fun. But then he started going like full manager, getting mad. Knocked one of the umpires over.
Oh dang!
Oh, it was a great flop. This was like, and this is like NBA mid-season form flop from the umpire because it's not like he like pushed him or anything. Just kind of showed him a chest. And got ejected. I think first or second inning. Didn't really matter. LSU's just that good. And they're not just good at baseball, Caleb. They are supposedly really good at something else.
Yeah. So we have the final Jello shot totals here. So LSU, and this isn't even close. I think that probably out of all the other teams combined, they may have had the most. So LSU didn't only win the trophy in Omaha, they also won the Jello shot trophy. They had a total of 52,390 Jello shots that they bought, which I will quickly do the math on that. At $5 a Jello shot is a grand total of $261,950.
Let's go, dude.
And this next closest to them, who was in second place, was Coastal Carolina, second place twice at the tournament, and they had a grand total of 9,117.
Not even close.
That was a hell of a ride that Coastal Carolina didn't give. That is actually didn't Dustin Johnson go to school there? So wouldn't you think partying and all that they do down there would have helped
Myrtle
them out
Beach
a little bit?
Yeah.
No, they do. They snort things. They don't drink things down there, I think.
It's dirty Myrtle. What happens at Myrtle Beach stays at Myrtle Beach.
Yeah. That's what DJ was doing on tours. So he wasn't a big Jello shot guy. He's more of a sniffer. I've heard. So
Snows
if that was
South Carolina too.
Yeah, if snow was a thing there in Omaha, Coastal Carolina would have ran away with it. But LSU did 52,000 Jello shots. So that means that over the next year, we have to consume 52,000 Jello shots.
That's just to think about this. The state of Louisiana, which is one of the poorest states in the country, just spent over $250,000 in the state of Nebraska.
That is very true.
To consume alcohol that's probably not that pure straight. Like no way you're making 52,000 Jello shots and those things are strong.
No, they can't. But look, if you're that bar, you probably made I don't even know, probably $500,000 on Jello shots.
No, the things this does for Omaha is nuts. Like this is one of the few events that realistically makes actual millions of dollars and really generates money for a local economy when it comes to sports. Like this is what everyone else looks at, and it's like, wow, look at how Omaha gets 10 million plus from the hotels, tickets and all this. It's like, yeah, this is a one-off, and this is why, because you have the state of Louisiana popping in and dropping $200,000 on Jello shots. There you go. You can't beat that. There's only so many other events that could do something like this.
Hey, you know what? You know who's not showing up to that bar? John Taffer and Bar Rescue. Okay, they have it figured out.
He's across the street at the other Omaha bar. They didn't think of this.
You guys got to have $4 Jello shots. What the hell's going on here? So no, congrats to LSU and your alcoholic supporter fans.
Just means more.
Moving to guys that are having a great time celebrating, the Florida Panthers, as they have gone back to back, kind of dominated the series at the end. 2 blowout losses for the Oilers, kind of embarrassing fashion to a Stanley Cup final that started great. Everybody's like, oh, could this be one of the best Stanley Cup finals of all time? Didn't turn out to be that, as the Panthers dominated Game 6 5-1. shutting down Connor McDavid for the entire series, Leon Draisaitl. They kind of made a team that's very, very good with stars and took them out. And I mean, Florida had a super team. Let's be honest here. Brad Marchand was big for them. They got the trade deadline. Seth Jones was big for them. They got the trade deadline. So they've kind of built this team. Now they go back to back. And kind of the question is, how many more can they win? Is kind of the word around because of how the state of Florida doesn't have state income tax. So they have some free agents where they can offer less money. And instead of them going somewhere else, they're going to probably get paid about the same. But it was dominating fashion. Canada is yet to win the cup, I think, in 32 years. It stays in America. And I think the Florida Panthers also cracked the cup.
They did. That, in fact, did happen. Also, the parade, that's kind of the perks you get of when you have multiple titles. Your parade can be not as good because you keep having parades. What a first world problem to have. But when we talked about the series in the beginning, I'll give Caleb his flowers. He said this was over last week. He said it's game 6. It's over. I didn't believe him. I was incorrect on that. It just depth beats out talent in the sport. And it was great to have all those overtime games, but now you get to see on the back end what that does to a team that is so star reliant, which Edmonton was. Like, yes, you have some of the best players in the league, but when you're in the sport that you already have guys going in and out so much, when the third line just absolutely dominates the other team's third line, at a certain point, it just gives. And you can only play so many overtime games, and you lose them, it hurts even more. So it just felt like, unlike last year where it was like, oh, yeah, this is over. And then Edmonton comes all the way back. It's like, oh, we have our back and forth, but they just got worn out. It felt, and especially at the end of that last game, just like, yeah, this is over. Just didn't have the strength, the resilience to pull that a second time. And when you have a team as deep as Florida, that's what you get to do. And then you get to crack the Stanley Cup because you might just bring it back again.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was one of those things where, Florida has guys in their third line that would be first liners on probably some other teams. They probably have guys in their fourth line that would be second liners on other teams. So, yeah, they have that depth. They can kind of control things with, like I said, and I think that's the next big question is you have a lot of these teams now, or it's kind of rumblings in the NHL of like, look, they have no state income tax. We've seen a team from Florida be in 6 straight Stanley Cup finals. So now, like, is the NHL going to do anything about that? But the other problem is there's other teams that don't have state income tax, not just Florida. So I don't think they're going to do anything of that. You can't. I mean, that's a political issue, as we don't like to get into those, but neither does the NHL. But no, Florida is very smart. They've constructed this team. They're still young. They should be the favorites probably going into next year. And no, I mean, it was just fun. I mean, I think you get into the dynasty thing and back-to-back, but, I mean, they're a fun team to watch, I would say. They got some guys on their team that's very – like Barkov, their captain, like they were still up at like 4 or 5 in the morning. He went to his neighbor's house with the Stanley Cup and was like, get your ass out of bed. I have the cup. And his wife's like, oh, he's coming. Like, and they're like, we're outside. Like, these guys are having fun. Brad Marchand, there was a picture of him. He had a cigar in one hand, a cup of coffee, an iced alcoholic tea in the same hand with the coffee, and then underneath his armpit was a beer. These guys are just having fun.
That doesn't sound fun. Like, it sounds fun, but it sounds like no fun. To imagine that combination. You know what they're missing? A Jello shot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they are. They're missing a Jello shot and some Dustin Johnson snow. That's all they're missing.
Hey man, it's Dirty Myrtle for a reason. They don't call it Clean Myrtle.
And hey, look, these guys are partying down in Miami, cracking cups, sipping from the cup. They're living their best life. But no, it was fun. I would say, to Canada, try again next year. 32 years, the cup stays in America. It's America's sport, I guess. That's what some would say. And just get better. But no, I think, the moving forward now in the NHL is now there's questions about Connor McDavid. Does he want to stay in Edmonton? So, I mean, this series kind of propelled some things because, Connor McDavid's supposed to be the next great one, and he doesn't win again. So, I know it's hockey, but there's going to be heat on him from a perspective in Canada as you're supposed to be the next great one. So, that'll be interesting to see. But now moving to Oklahoma from Florida. Game 7 of the NBA Finals was last night. The Thunder pulled it out, winning 103-91 over the Indiana Pacers. SGA was Finals MVP, and I have a quick stat here before we really dive into this game. He's the fourth player in NBA history to win regular season MVP, Finals MVP, and scoring title in the same season. Do you guys know the other three players?
I know two of them, Shaq and Jordan.
Yep.
Is it Kareem?
It is Kareem.
Wow.
So that's great company to be a part of. Not only, does he win the scoring title, MVP, Finals MVP, you're also put up there with those four, which that can never be replaced talking about it. And then the other big news is Tyrese Halliburton tore his Achilles in the first quarter of the game. He was on fire to start it out. I mean, and then, he was playing with the calf strain. Some didn't want him to play. He said, as long as I can walk, I'm playing. It's that catch-22. It's Game 7. Kind of put yourself out there. But now it delays him probably for most likely a year after having a great run. But, yeah, I mean, I'll just start with, look, the Pacers were not at first hurt by the Halliburton injury. And then the third quarter killed them. I mean, that changed the game. They, turned it over, 10 times, and Oklahoma City didn't. I just think Oklahoma City had better players and more depth of quality players, and that's pretty much what prevailed.
This is the worst way for this series to end because it's been such a great series. And there's for two reasons. One, obviously, the Halliburton injury. That's terrible. It's one of the star players of this team. The guy who's really, I think, gotten the most recognition out of these playoffs has been Tyrese Halliburton. He's become more of a household name than he was at the start of this. So for him to obviously go out early, that's just sucks. And then there's going to be so many repercussions beyond that, as you talked about the year plus. We'll get into that in a minute. But also, it's not like OKC ran away with this, which also just makes this have a weird taste in your mouth after what's been such a fun playoffs overall and such a fun series, because it's like, if not the best guy, one of the stars for Indiana goes down. They stay in it, but they just don't have enough, right? These guys get into foul trouble. They start turning the ball over, and you sit there and you go, man, if this guy doesn't get hurt, what does this game look like? And that's always the worst type of question to have, but it really doesn't matter for OKC. Of course, following this game, you get the Twitter dialogue of, it's a fake ring, this is Mickey Mouse, blah, blah, blah. History books don't care. It is what it is in its own sense. And for the Thunder, this is one of the few teams that I feel like can do this again. The NBA, last 7 years, 7 different champions. If there's any teams that break that streak, it's a team that 3 years ago won 25 games, is now an NBA championship team, has everyone under contract for another year, and is young and likes each other. That's scary. We haven't seen that, at least in recent, a team that feels like this in a while since the super teams, and since that. But it really just sucked how it ended for a team that deserves all the praise it's going to get, to win 60-plus games in the postseason, to come back in multiple playoff series, and to go 7 games and win. It just felt like a bad cherry on top of a really good sundae. But if you're Oklahoma City, you really don't care if the cherry gets thrown on the ground, stomped on. You'll still eat it. You won. You take a win as a win, and 3 years from now, we're not going to be going, Tyrese Halliburton's injury is the only reason OKC won the final. No, we're going to say, hey, SGA has this great accolade of winning every award ever and an NBA title. These things go by quickly.
Yeah, I think with kind of what you were talking about, Caleb, with the kind of the catch-22, it is kind of hard to be like, this is Game 7 of the NBA Finals. I'm the best player on the team. I have to go out there and perform. And now we look at what happened to Tyrese. And it literally was the most textbook example of that going wrong. The team was doing decently well. He goes out there and doesn't strain it where he tears his Achilles, which is worst case scenario from what could happen. So I don't know. I was yeah, he should play. But after seeing that, it's kind of do these guys for their career, go, maybe I shouldn't play, because yes, this is Game 7 of the Finals, but like you said, now it's a year off of my career where maybe I could get my team to be back in the same situation again, or, whatever. But
yeah, I mean, it is tough because, the same thing happened to Kevin Durant, in the finals against the Raptors, where he had a calf strain. He supposedly didn't want to play. The Warriors wanted him to play, and he ended up popping his as well, which is much different because in that series he was like going into the playoffs hurt and all that, and they kind of limped their way, you could say, to that Raptors team. So it wasn't as close. But yeah, I mean, when you're a competitor, I think that's one of the biggest takeaways though, is you have a guy in this day and age in the NBA where we talk about these guys don't want to play, they don't care as much. This guy is like, I'm risking a year of my career to try and bring an NBA title to Indiana. So I think if you're Indiana, it's like, great, we have that leader. We know we're guaranteed that the way he performed, it's just what's he going to look like post injury. But I mean, you've had 3 Achilles tears also in the NBA playoffs. Damian Lillard, Jason Tatum, and now Tyrese Haliburton. I think now moving forward there's 2 things. The Thunder are probably the most least talked about 68 win team and championship team probably in NBA history. I know we're going to talk about the Kevin Durant trade after this, but to some people, that's what they're going to remember yesterday for more than the NBA Finals and the Thunder winning probably. So you have that, and I think if you're the Thunder, I think that helps motivate you even more because, like Jerry said, they still have a young core. This is a young core. It's not like they've brought in pieces to do this and do that. They still have like 4 draft picks next year. They have the draft picks for the draft that's Wednesday. I guess they took a kid in the lottery last year who didn't even play in the rotation, who's now going to come in next year and play. So yeah, everybody talked about the Celtics. They can repeat and they can do this, and they're going to be the next dynasty. The Thunder are actually built to sustain it because of when you build your own team, unlike trying to, organically build your team like the Thunder did, unlike trying to just morph it together and build a big 3, is you can build a core, you can build these different pieces. Everybody knows their role. You grow up in that role. It helps you. So moving forward for the West, it's like, okay, it's the Thunder. Now you look at the East, who people already thought was wide open going into next year before the Haliburton injury. And now you have the Haliburton injury and the Tatum injury. You have the Knicks who fired their coach. You have Giannis who wants to be traded. But now with the way the East looks, does Giannis say, I can stay in Milwaukee another year? So I think that's the biggest question moving forward is like, what does the landscape of the NBA look like, especially in the East, moving into next year with it's basically wide open. It's for anybody's taking. And, Indiana is kind of in a weird position because it's like you can't really add much because you don't want to get rid of much, but you lost your best player. So I don't know. I think that's the biggest question is like if you look at the East, like what will it look like next year now? Is next year the next year with the head coaches they get and all that? But yeah, I just think also if you're the Thunder, you're the most least talked about team to win a championship in probably modern sports out of all the big 4 sports. So I think that helps them motivate you. But yeah, I think it was one of those weird days where it kind of felt like Game 7, kind of didn't feel like Game 7. But I think usually when a season ends, we have a lot of our questions answered. I think unlike before, it's kind of we have more questions now than answers with the ending of the NBA season.
Some Eastern team is going to mess up their timeline because of these injuries. That's what I'm so curious about because, like you mentioned, Caleb, in 3 Achilles injuries, all in the East, right? Dame, which puts Milwaukee in that weird spot again with Giannis, as you mentioned. Boston with Jason Tatum, which is that core is now in a really weird spot because Al Horford's going to go at some point. You have a lot of guys in expiring deals and guys who need to get paid. And with Indiana, what happens with Miles Turner, right? He's a guy, even though his finals performance may have lost him a couple million, he ain't going to be cheap, and he's going to go somewhere. But there's going to be some team in the East, I don't know who, I don't know what, that is going to see this landscape and is either going to make a move that puts them over the top and we look back at it and go, they capitalize on the situation, or they are going to mess things up. The team I'm very curious about the most out of this is Detroit. That seems like a little left field out of nowhere. A young team that has a lot of pieces there that took a step this year from being one of the worst in the NBA to, if I remember, playoff play-in team, right in that role, right? That seems like a team that could go and jump and get a star. But what happens if that doesn't work? That team, that like there are so many examples of that. New York's another, right? We're talking about coaches. What happens if they move for somebody and they move off their future? What happens? Orlando's already made their move.
Yeah, they made their big move. Yeah.
Like, and it just feels like some East Conference team is going to make a decision that will really make or break their futures, because you have a lot of teams that are in particular spots, as we mentioned, with injuries, but a couple that were already like, I don't know, but we could be there. The East is open as it is every time. But I'm so curious about the East. The West doesn't feel as intriguing in that mind. We're going to talk about the West more in just a minute. But before we do, the one thing I really loved about this series, and I want to make sure you mention, is twofold. One, shout out Sam Presti. This is a moment that has been years in the making, and we're going to talk about Kevin Durant more in that trade in just a minute. The reason the Thunder are here is because Sam Presti made moves, some good, some bad, but was never afraid. And that's something that should be celebrated and will be celebrated with this title, right? This is the same guy. To get your core piece in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you traded away Paul George, who said he wanted to be there a year earlier, and had a duo with Russell Westbrook, legend in that city. For all those draft picks, for Shai, your now new centerpiece, you later moved on from Russell Westbrook, the guy, again, who I know Nick Collison's Mr. Thunder because, he's one of the founding guys, blah, blah, blah. That's probably the best Thunder player of all time, or at least a lot of people's minds, probably the guy if you think of the Thunder, even with Shai having this enormous season. He moved on from him, moved on from Chris Paul, right? And made all these draft picks. Jalen Williams is a 12th pick. Chet Holmgren's your one top 5 pick. Think about that. These are a lot of guys that are 20, 30, 15 that you slowly built, and it's because Sam Presti over time traded guys who were very good but knew, okay, we may not win with them. And to now have a 68-win team, to still have capital and to still build, it feels like this final moment from when you had the first big three and then you move on from James Harden because he cost a couple too many million. And it's like, oh my God, you broke up this core. But now here you are. It's all worth it, And so I want to give him his flowers. This is a hard place to win. It's an expansion team, one of the most recent. I get it, the Seattle move X, Y, and Z. That's not a perfect 1-to-1, but it's not easy to win there. And two, if this series taught anything to me about the NBA, is that styles are back. Instead of just super ball of give LeBron the ball, give D-Wade the ball, give Steph the ball. You had two teams that made the deep runs who are very stylistically sound. The Thunder, a great defensive team. The Pacers, super fast, right? And they had pieces that worked really well together to fit the system. Like we talk about Jalen Williams a lot, he's a second fiddle. He's a great defender. He can score decently. It's not like he's going to be a guaranteed Hall of Famer right now. He probably will get in because everyone gets the NBA Hall of Fame. But guys like Caruso, Hardenstein help make that defense work. And there's so many pieces there for Dagnall, and the thing he wanted to build worked. Instead of just having give the ball to best player, no, you had teams that really worked well together. The Pacers are the best example of that. Tyrese Halliburton's a pass-first point guard. We used to never we thought those were gone. He is almost Steve Nashian in the way he worked. And it was like watching the 7 seconds or less Suns at times. And now, so instead of this, with the death of super teams returns stylistic basketball, and these finals are probably the best example we've had of that in years. And I was really happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're the Magic today or after the game yesterday or during the game, you feel much better about the Desmond Bane trade because everybody's like, oh my God, you traded for Desmond Bane, you gave up all those picks, blah, 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 blah. You feel much better now. You're like, okay, we liked the deal when we made it. We feel even better about the deal now. I like your point about Detroit because for years there's been rumblings with Detroit fans to get Devin Booker back in the state of Michigan. And maybe this is now the time for the Suns. Because look, we'll move into now the Kevin Durant trade. He's traded from the Suns to the Rockets. In that deal, the Suns get Jalen Green, who is a former, second overall pick?
High pick, yeah. I remember number 2, but
second or third. He was pretty high overall pick. He plays shooting guard as well. So now you have Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, and now Jalen Green. The logical sense would be to somewhat build around Jalen Green. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not. So now you move into, do the Suns now blow everything up after trading Kevin Durant? So I think that's what's interesting when you look at the Detroit. So it's going to be very interesting in the East. But if you're the Magic, you're feeling really good about yourself. And if you're the Pistons, like you said, you may screw up a timeline, but now is this your chance? Looking at the Kevin Durant trade, now that he's traded to the Rockets, the Suns traded him to the Rockets for Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, the 10th overall pick in 2025, which the draft is Wednesday, and 5 second-round picks. Kevin Durant is 36 now. He'll be 37 in September, and this is the 5th team that he's played on now. A legendary player, Hall of Fame player, top 10 player playing for his 5th team. Unheard of historically looking at the NBA, but it's a new era in the NBA. Look, I think if you're the Rockets, I like the deal. They kept somewhat most of their core together. Some people said that Chris Mannix said today that they kind of wanted to get rid of Jalen Green to begin with, bring in Kevin Durant, a guy who, is older, but can still get things done and still be very good. So I like the deal. I don't know if it puts them over the Thunder, but it is a deal that definitely bolsters them moving forward, especially when they were the 2nd overall seed and everybody's like, we want to play them because they were so young in their playoff experience.
I'm kind of like over the Kevin Durant, like this is the team that's going to be good now. Like ever since he left Golden State, I keep getting tricked into this is going to be the good team now, or the good situation for Kevin Durant. So, they'll probably make the playoffs or whatever, but I don't know. I don't trust a whole lot in Kevin Durant now. He's one of the best scorers of all time, one of the best players of all time, but I think, I'm done getting tricked into it.
I don't blame you. The multi-million-dollar question literally is how healthy will a 36-year-old Kevin Durant be? This feels like the good thing for him is that he'll probably end up being option number 1, but he truly does not need to be. This is a good team with Houston. He can be a scorer, and the things he lacks within, especially defense, they're still a good defensive team. Jabari Smith Jr., Fred VanVleet's a solid defender. Sengun is your kind of core young guy, right? So they kept a lot of those pieces. Yes, you got rid of Dylan Brooks. That just kind of hurts in that mind. The Suns, I am just so fascinated by. As you were kind of alluding to, Caleb, like if they keep this core around, you have Bradley Beal, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Devin Booker. What are we doing here? The 10th overall pick obviously does feel enticing and very intriguing, especially where they go, where they want to go. Also, the crazy amount. There was 5 second-round picks just for fun. I don't know if that's for cap reasons or not, but, that's always interesting to me. This feels like the Rockets are a little bit in win-now mode, which I also find interesting because this is very similar to the Thunder in my mind, which is last year we were looking at the Thunder and like, wow, this is a really good team. They're really young, but they're going to try to work some pieces in. But instead they got Caruso and Hartenstein. They got pieces they needed to take that extra step. KD feels like that piece to have a guy that even if he's not prime Kevin Durant, where it's just 30 every night, no problem. Yes, this is older Kevin Durant. You have younger pieces around him that can work really well. So maybe I am falling into the Trevor trap here of, believing, but I see the vision here, but this feels very win now. And I'm very curious in the bet because I don't know how many years you have of Kevin Durant, especially post Achilles. He's not been the same player. He's still been a fantastic player. Let me be very clear. This is, again, a guaranteed certified Hall of Famer, and one of the best to do it in our generation, a guy that we will talk about to our kids. Like, you don't know Kevin Durant, like they talk to us about Jordan and Clyde Drexler. We're going to have the same regard for him. But it's funny because I don't care that they gave up Jalen Green. I care that they gave up Dylan Brooks. Is that weird? I think that's probably the weirdest question.
I think a lot of people would say that's weird, but I get it.
Because I feel like Jalen Green and Kevin Durant is just a younger swap of the same player. Like, Jalen Green's not as prolific of a scorer as Kevin Durant, but a guy who scores 20 plus a night is okay at defense. It's kind of what you gave up and got back and forth. But Dylan Brooks is one of the guys who made that core defense. I just talked about stylistic basketball making its kind of return here. Dylan Brooks was really good at being that great, annoying defender. Granted, you can't shoot. That was always the running gag, right? He'd bark at you and do all this weird stuff, but he can't shoot. He's like Tony Allen in some sense. But it's like I'm very curious where this goes because it now feels like the Rockets think they can win now. And that's kind of what this move signals to me. So if it works, we'll come back to this moment and we'll go, wow, you look at the Rockets. They had the piece here. If this blows up, which is very possible, Kevin Durant has blown up teams in the past. He will continue to probably blow up teams until he retires. And if he ever works in the NBA past that, he'll continue to blow up teams. It's something he's good at. Don't look at his Twitter if you're trying to hire him, right? Like, that's kind of the thing is is he enough or is he going to be a poison pill? Which a lot of teams have asked that question. And we've seen kind of the past answers, but I could see why you take the poison pill right now. Because the effects could be great. You're good, Trev. Go for it.
I just like on the flip side of this, like the biggest question I have for the Suns is like, okay, like what do we do now? Like the glaring issue with the Suns for me is that Bradley Beal is getting paid $250 million and averages 17 points a game. You can't I don't see a team taking that contract. And so it's kind of like, what do you do to keep rebuilding? You mentioned the Devin Booker thing. I could see that, right? That makes sense. But you're kind of just stuck with Bradley Beal with this massive contract.
With a no trade clause.
With a no trade clause, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It is the craziest part of all this is underlying that whole thing, Trevor, is the fact that Bradley Beal, if he wants to for 3 weeks, could just put his phone on Do Not Disturb.
Mm-hmm.
They can't technically move him unless he wants to be moved. And I think that's a really, really good point about this. And it just makes me so fascinated about the Suns because wherever you go with this 10th pick, you're also now in the spot where you have a superstar guaranteed at this 10th pick. There's not a Cooper Flagg, not an Ace Bailey right here. So either you move up to get that and you have to give up more pieces, or you have 5 shooting guards on a team that's already terrible at defense. Very weird situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris Manick talked about it today too, is somehow the Rockets, I think, already own some first-round picks from the Suns in previous trades. Yep. So the Suns are kind of screwed with the rebuild thing. It's like they're really in a weird situation because, yes, you have contracts you can't move, players you can't move, and you also don't have picks to then be bad. You have to somewhat be good to then not have those picks be too good for the team that owns them. So, yeah, it's really, really weird. But, Trevor, I do like the Kevin Durant thing because it feels like ever since Kevin Durant won in Golden State, after he left, he kind of has been like, I want what makes me feel good and what makes me feel better. And he thought it was the Nets with Kyrie, and then he figured out I can't play with this guy. He thought it was Phoenix. He figured out we as a team or an organization are bad. I want traded. He had a chance to go back to Golden State at the trade deadline. Golden State wanted him. They're like, please come back. We can be very good. Let's try and run it back. Towards the end of your career, we'll have you and Steph playing together to finish out your careers. And that team probably could have done something.
Mm-hmm. And
now it's like, okay, I'm going to Houston, and they have a coach who's very, very good in Ime Udoka. And now with this core, so it's just it kind of just feels like he is kind of just, I don't know if winning is his top priority, which if you're the Rockets, you don't hope that that's the case at all. But it just feels like since he won those 2 titles, he's fine with that. He's good with that. That's what he needed to do in his career to get it off his chest. And now he's just kind of out there in the world trying to find what is best for him. It's like whatever the new flavor of the month is, he's just like trying to figure it out. But Jerry, yeah, he is going all over on Twitter. I'll tell you that. His fingers have to hurt.
Dude, no, not the way. With the amount of basketballs he dribbles, I guarantee you his fingers are fine. That's why he can keep doing it. But I'm going to turn this around to the NBA Finals we just watched. And to appreciate the 2 teams we were in this situation is just years ago, this is a team in the Phoenix Suns that was 2 games away from being an NBA champion. And now look where they are, just how quickly everything spiraled away. That is where a team like Oklahoma City, we talk about them not feeling like they've gotten the correct value for everything they've done. I point to this situation. I go, look at that. This team, the Suns just years ago, we were talking about them as a team that maybe they come back next year. And then they went all in and they absolutely screwed it up. Now they look like the Brooklyn Nets when they try to get like the remains of the big 3 from the Boston. They got like Paul Pierce on his last leg. Kevin Garnett wasn't even playing defense anymore, which is like the only thing he really did. Right. So it's like you have that end of this. And then also this is what I think really hurts Indiana fans is you look at this situation, you go, this could be us as well. We were this close to the mountaintop. And now we are sitting on a major injury. And I'm not saying that the Pacers front office is anything like the Suns front office, but just how quickly you can fall from glory in this league, which at one point was not the case. You know, we used to talk, there used to be, you sleepwalk to the finals every year with Cleveland, LeBron's led team versus the Warriors, right? But now it's like the Suns were 2 games away from being an NBA champions. We talk about Giannis in a totally different sense if this is the case, and Milwaukee totally differently. But now the Suns, who went all out right after that, absolutely messed it up. They're going to be in years of basketball purgatory at best, unless they find a way to move on from everything. But they're going to have to do it at a bargain. So, you know, you look at both. I look at the Suns to see how insane both the Thunder run was in that lens of like, here's what it looks like when you make it. It makes everything make sense, but also just how quickly it could fall apart. And if you want to play into the anxiety of a fan base, and I don't mean to bully Indiana, this is kind of where you could see this like despair and all these things creep in because of how quickly they fell off the mountaintop after being at that highest high. And then you look at, oh, do we re-sign Miles Turner? What happens with guys like Mathurin or Nembhard and all these guys who had great series and great playoffs, right? Like, it's just that hard to be a champion. And now you have a guy who kind of destroyed the title chances of the Suns going to the Rockets, who are going to try to win a championship. That is how tough this league has been. And is it good or bad for the sport? That's a question that we'll always ask and continue to debate. That's why we have a podcast.
Yeah, it's what keeps us in business. I mean, it really does. But no, I mean, it's a fast start to the NBA offseason, which I think is, I don't know if it's going to be crazy, but we're going to see some teams taking some stabs. That's why I'm going to call right now. Devin Booker is going to be a Detroit Piston. I'm calling it. I think it's going to happen. And yeah, I think the Suns are just in that awkward spot where you either, you know, we talk about it all the time. You don't want to be in the middle. You either want to be the worst or the best. They are kind of outside looking in. Let's get to some comments here. I don't know what Nolan Mark's talking about. MVP in the chat.
I guarantee he's talking about the Cubs.
Yeah, I think so. But, you know, baseball, is it baseball ever going to talk about on this show? Starting next week, maybe. What else are we going to talk about, guys?
I'm a freaking White Sox fan. What do I have to talk about?
I mean, you have the Pope, and that's just it.
That's about it, dude. Like, and we're still under 500 after the postman elected.
Well, you know, he's wearing that hat around town now, I see.
That was one nice thing. We were in the weirdest timeline, which is just last week, the Cardinals and the White Sox played at White Sox Park. White Sox get swept, shocker. But like the first game, White Sox lose 12-2, standard. Then the next day on my timeline, I see the Pope joining a White Sox chant in Rome. I'm like, this is so weird. Like, this terrible baseball team that keeps hurting me. The leader of the Roman Catholic Church being a fan. What's going on here? Like, but yeah, we'll talk about baseball whenever we get later into the year, but I have nothing to talk about. And the last thing I want to talk about is the Cubs.
Well, you know, the Cubs are a great team, national treasure, some would say. The lovable losers, as they've been called for years. They have a pretty good team. The pitching staff is subpar. Offense is great, so that'll be interesting. But no, I mean, yeah, I think that's the big thing is what do we talk about moving forward? We'll figure it out. If we're doing 52,000 Jello shots, that's content. It looks like we avoided World War III, which is great. None of us are going to get
Oh, God, I thought we don't talk about politics.
We don't, but I'm just saying for us, like our bodies, for draft purposes, I did search what is the draft ages. And I am a few months from being out of that age, which makes me feel good. Trevor's right behind me there.
Yeah.
So
B-2 Bombers, Missouri. There you go.
Hey,
yeah.
You know, it's just people wonder why we spend so much. That's why. You know?
And it's also for the flyovers because I've seen that stealth bomber fly over Faroe Field, baby. MIZ. That's what we're going to be talking about next. It's going to be college football preview season before you guys know it. Oh, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Creepy photo. Nolan Mark is back here. Yes, definitely a good acknowledgement. We move, gentlemen, hopefully. I think he's talking about the Cubs yet again of trying to do stuff. I will say for creepy photo Nolan Mark here. So he FaceTimed me earlier today. He is sunburnt like Larry the Lobster. He said his back feels like it's bleeding. He said he went went to the pool at his apartment complex and he fell asleep.
Oh,
I'll do it.
I was playing video games with him earlier. He said, I have to get into a cold water shower right now. Give me 4 minutes.
no, you gotta go hot water.
You got to go
shower.
hot. I told him it gets the burnout if you go
Yeah,
hot. Yeah,
you gotta
it
go
kills.
hot water
He
shower, yeah.
refused. And
You got
mind
to.
you, he also showed me a thermostat in his apartment, 91 degrees. They have no AC.
Oh no!
Ooh, oh no! Oh no!
He has no AC, so he is DEFCON 5, or you can call him Iran this week.
The son, Pete Hegseth. A comparison I never thought I'd make.
Yeah, Nolan, you have to go. You have to go hot shower. It kills the burn.
Hey, speaking of the Cubbies right now, bases loaded, and one of the two. It's a 1-2 game against the Cardinals in Busch Stadium. Ian Happ up to bat, top of the fifth. So
Yeah,
there's your update. You want to talk baseball? There's your live update. White Sox losing 5-0 for those who really care.
I have the game on right now, Jerry. As you say that, there was just a pitch meeting on the mound. Everybody's walking back to their places.
We got Matt Liberatore. There you go.
Yep.
I know what happens. I won't spoil it for you.
Yeah,
Live
I'm a little
reaction.
delayed here. I'm watching on a streaming platform.
Yeah, I've got the ESPN app because I don't watch the Cardinals nor the White Sox, which is, it was really sad. We can leave on this point since we're talking baseball. I've been in St. Louis for over a year. I haven't had baseball success since 2005. That's literally the last time the White Sox have won a playoff series and the World Series because, of course, that's how we're going to do it. I come to St. Louis, city famous for their baseball team. Busch Stadium, great stadium. Whenever you guys want to come down, you're welcome. You'll be in this lovely house.
Yes.
But I come here and I'm like, finally, at least I'll get to watch some good baseball. My team, especially last year, won 40 games, I think 41 out of 162 tries. I come here, they don't make the playoffs. And now they're just barely 500. I'm like, what are we doing here?
It happens. That's just what it. I mean, Jerry, clearly you are a fan of losing teams, and you may be the common denominator in all this. The White Sox you're a fan of, they suck. The Bulls you're a fan of, they suck. Duke basketball hasn't done much in years. You're a fan of. Mizzou football, they're in the SEC. We still think they're in the Big 12. You moved to St. Louis, the team, you killed off Albert Pujols, and they suck.
Okay, I didn't kill off Albert Pujols. Albert Pujols is a couple years behind. Let's be fair.
The Blues lost in the most dramatic way I've ever seen in my life.
And honestly, if I have all that misery as a Blackhawks fan to make sure the Blues have that moment, it's all worth it.
And I will say this too, Jerry. You move out of South Bend, Notre Dame makes it to a national title.
That is the thing.
So I'm just saying here, Jerry. I'm just saying.
For punishment.
They're saying that you're still an Arsenal fan. I don't know anything about soccer.
Arsenal's also been disappointing. They haven't won a trophy in 5 years. Second place in the Premier League for the last 2 years. Get to the quarterfinals of the Champions League. Absolutely dealt it there. Haven't won the FA Cup. No, I'm a glutton for punishment. I don't know what I've done. I don't know what spirits I have encountered. Where I think it all happened? Here we go. We're doing story time. This is what happens when we don't have stuff to talk about. Is after the 2005 World Series, I was proudly wearing that T-shirt. Come on. I had to enjoy the moment. Little me is like, this is normal. I'm like, I'm 5 years old.
Be one of those kids in Boston in the 2000s.
Oh, well, I'm 5 years old. I don't know any better. And I'm going to this DePaul basketball camp, which is right by my house at this little recreational center. And they make you wear the T-shirt, for photos and all these things. And they have all the special basketballs. And so I take off my White Sox shirt. I drop it off on the side like everyone else does. The fire alarm goes off.
No.
Everybody evacuates. I'm not alone in this. It's not like I walk out and everyone else is there. No, the whole place evacuates. I come back. What's missing?
No. It was all
I think ever since that moment, I've been cursed.
The fire department. The firefighters wanted that shirt.
The Bears lost the Super Bowl, I think, the following year.
Yeah.
Again, the White Sox have not won a playoff series ever since then. The most successful team I think I root for is Missouri Athletics. And that is heartbreaking. This is the team that is on the other side of the fifth down.
Yeah, Jerry,
it's bad.
Your life's just, I told you, it's tough.
I go back to Catholicism. Notre Dame does terrible. I leave, they do great.
It's just the way it
You know.
is. I mean, do I miss you in this area? Yes. But do I love Notre Dame's success more? Yes.
I'm not worth getting that drunk for you guys lose to Stanford.
But me and Trevor may have to come down to St. Louis this summer. We may have to do that.
There you go. You want to create real content? We'll do the 999 at Bush
Yeah,
Stadium.
we could.
Yeah.
We could definitely do it, and we can maybe find a place with Jello shots, and I'll walk in and say I want 52,390.
Again, your unemployed friend on a Tuesday taking 52,000 Jello
We got to
shots.
start down in these Jello shots. We have a whole year to do 52,390 Jello shots.
The worst part is that all of this, LSU is going to celebrate this baseball title and then go 9-3 in football and not make the playoffs. It's going to be all for naught. That's why you have 52,000 Jello shots. Is for football seasons under Brian Kelly.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, Brian Kelly says it's the best team he's ever had. I don't know what that means, but I mean, his best teams are 10-win teams. So
Shout out Garrett Nussmeier.
leave it at that. All right, Nolan here before we go. Another ND recruiting trail. Yeah, they've done very well recruiting-wise. The way I view recruiting now is verbal commitments are nice, but until they sign and they're in a uniform, I don't look too much into it, but it is exciting. Notre Dame has continued to dominate. If you haven't noticed, they took like the two best players out of Pennsylvania, stole them from Penn State. Now they're all crying. I love the argument Penn State fans have is they weren't smart enough to get into Penn State. And the one kid commented, I have a 3.7 GPA. And Notre Dame is historically one of the hardest schools to get into for recruits. You have to get accepted in the university before they can even offer you. So the argument for that is very funny. We beat them in the Orange Bowl, and now we're beating them on the trail, as some would say.
I don't want to get too deep into our football preview season, but like recruiting nowadays is so hard and feels so useless to keep up with.
Yeah, it's crazy. Every day it's something different.
Well, and also it's like, okay, and Notre Dame's probably one of the few anomalies is you have so many teams now. Missouri's a prime example. We're missing a couple of pieces. We're recruited fine. Like we just got a running back from Chicago. We recruited live on TV. That was kind of cool. But like that kid will probably transfer out in 2 years because we'll get a kid like Mizzou did from ULM, who's a good running back because that kid who just committed as a running back. So then that guy will transfer out, go somewhere else. Like I'll give Marcus Freeman a lot of credit. Again, I know we're getting into the real doldrums of the offseason of sports right now. He is one of the few guys that feels like he still develops players and guys stay within the program, kind of grow. So that does mean a little bit more. But like what happens 3 months from now and these guys decommit because a guy comes in for the transfer portal and takes one of their spots? It's made the high school recruiting aspect, I feel, so much harder to pay attention to because it's like, oh, yeah, you got this 5-star kid from Pennsylvania. Oh, wait, you just got the kid from USC.
Yeah.
A doesn't equal B here. So that's something we'll definitely talk about more in the season preview area when we get there because, again, it's that time of year. We're going to start talking baseball. God.
Yep. We have to.
God help us. Help us.
We have to. There's nothing else going on. But no, so that will do it. NBA season's wrapped up. Offseason has now started for that. NHL is wrapped up. Offseason starts for that. One domino's already fallen in the NBA. I think the next biggest domino is Giannis, so we will continue to watch on that one. But with that being said, that's going to do it for this week. We will be back next week. Thanks for watching.